Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're getting to something really interesting, kind of a digital time capsule issue. Abandonware.
Yeah, Abandonware. It's all that old software, mainly games, maybe applications that you
Yeah.
can't buy anymore. They're not supported.
Yeah,
Vanished.
exactly. And maybe you listening have run into this. You remember some amazing game from years ago, try to find it, and it's just gone. No official way to get it.
And that's the core tension, isn't it? It's unavailable, like commercially dead. But the tricky part is it's usually still under copyright.
Right. Which sets up this whole complex situation.
Totally.
We were actually listening to another podcast, Retro Reload, they call it, digging into this abandonware and the battle for digital history. Good stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and it really frames the central question nicely. Are the people sharing this old software, these abandonware pirates maybe, are they villains? Or are they actually heroes saving our digital past?
It's a great question. And it really ties into how we value, or maybe don't value, our digital culture sometimes.
So our mission for this deep dive is basically to unpack that. What is abandonware, really? What are the legal knots, the ethical sort of tangles?
And also look at the efforts to preserve this stuff, because some of it is genuinely important history.
Hmm.
But we also need to touch on the pitfalls, the downsides of it all.
Okay, let's start with the basics then. What exactly makes software abandonware? The name sounds pretty dramatic.
It does a bit, yeah. But essentially, it's just software games, apps that the original creators or publishers aren't selling anymore. They're not updating it, not supporting it.
Like imagine you've got a, I don't know, a 30-year-old PC up in the attic.
Right,
And maybe that's literally the only way to run some specific old game or program.
exactly. And think about your own experience, maybe trying to get old educational software working for your kids, or just wanting to replay something from way back when.
Oh, definitely. I've been there, found some old disks, tried to run them on a modern PC, and just, nope, nothing. It feels like that part of your history just evaporated.
That feeling is key, that sense of loss. But here's the critical legal point. Even though it feels abandoned, even if the company that made it doesn't exist anymore,
Uh-huh.
that software is very often still protected by copyright law. The rights might just be sitting with someone, somewhere, even if they're doing nothing with them.
Wow. So let me get this straight. If I download a game, say, from the early 90s that hasn't been sold for decades, maybe the company folded in 98, I'm still technically infringing copyright.
Technically, yes, that's the black and white of the law, pretty much. It feels weird, right? Because it's not available anywhere else.
It really does. Okay, so that leads us to the people sharing this stuff online, the individuals, the groups putting the software out there.
Yeah, the ones setting up websites, archives,
Yeah.
making it downloadable.
So are these people digital librarians? Or are they pirates? Good guys, bad guys? Where do they fit?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Sure.
Legally, as we said, it's infringement. But in practice, it's often a massive gray area.
How so?
Because enforcement is really patchy. If the company is defunct, who's going to sue? Or even if the company exists, they might just not care about a 25-year-old game that made no money.
Unless you're Nintendo. I heard the podcast mention them.
Ah, yes. Nintendo is a classic example of a company that very actively protects its back catalog. They see value there, and they pursue infringement.
Okay.
But many others don't or can't. And this is where it gets even more complicated. There's an argument that these unofficial archives, these pirates, sometimes actually end up helping the industry.
Helping. How does that work? Surely companies don't want their old stuff given away free.
Well, think about companies like Night Dive Studios. You know them. They specialize in remastering old classics.
Oh yeah, they do great work.
Right. But sometimes finding the original source code for those old games is incredibly difficult. It might be lost, corrupted, and sometimes the versions preserved by these fan communities, these archivists, might be the only surviving copies, or they might contain data or code snippets that help piece the original back together for a proper legal remaster.
No way. So the pirates are accidentally helping the restoration effort.
In some cases, yeah. It's a really weird kind of symbiotic relationship almost. This technically illegal activity potentially feeding back into legitimate commercial releases down the line.
That's wild. It makes you think maybe there should be more, I don't know, communication there.
You'd hope so sometimes. And look, there are definitely success stories, games that would probably be completely forgotten or unplayable if it weren't for these fan efforts.
Okay, I want to hear about those, like digital archaeology finds.
Okay, a big one people talk about is No One Lives Forever. Remember that? Early 2000s spy game. really stylish, funny.
Likely, yeah. It got good reviews, right?
It did, but then the rights got tangled up between like multiple companies,
Mm-hmm.
different publishers, developers. It became a legal mess. So for years, you just couldn't buy it anywhere legally. It vanished. But fans kept it alive, shared it, made patches to run it on modern systems. They basically refused to let it die.
And that probably kept interest simmering for an official re-release too, maybe?
Arguably, yes. It showed there was still an audience.
Yeah.
And there are less famous examples like the podcast mentioned the Home Alone game for the SNES.
Uh-huh. Okay, probably not a lost masterpiece.
Probably not. But someone, somewhere, felt it was important enough to preserve and share. It shows the dedication, maybe the slight madness of some of these archivists. They want to save everything.
It makes you think, doesn't it, about those games you loved as a kid? Maybe they're only playable now because someone uploaded them somewhere unofficially.
Exactly. Your own digital nostalgia might be reliant on this gray market.
But, okay, let's flip the coin. The podcast we heard also flagged some real problems. It's not all heroic preservation.
Definitely not. There are significant downsides.
Yeah.
One big one is when unfinished stuff gets leaked.
Unfinished. Like betas or prototypes.
Yeah, or sometimes even canceled projects. They mentioned the canceled remaster of GoldenEye 007 for the Xbox 360. An unfinished version leaked online a while back.
Oh, I remember hearing about that.
And, the people who worked on it were pretty upset. It wasn't finished. It wasn't what they intended to release. It felt disrespectful to them.
Yeah, I can see that. Preservation should be about the finished product, the thing the creators actually release, right? Not digging through their digital trash cans, so to speak.
That's a good way to put it. Respect for the creator's intent is important.
Yeah.
And then there's a more direct danger for users. Malware.
Ah, the dodgy download risk.
Exactly. You're hunting for that rare RPG from 1998. You find a download link on some obscure forum.
Click.
And bam, you haven't just downloaded the game, you've downloaded something nasty bundled with it. The podcast used the example of hidden cryptocurrency mining software.
Yeah.
Suddenly your PC is sluggish because it's mining Bitcoin for someone else.
Ouch. That's nasty. So you really, really have to be careful where you get this stuff from.
Absolutely critical. The convenience of finding an old game can come with some serious security risks if you're not cautious.
Okay, so given all the legal issues, the malware risks, if someone is interested in this stuff, in accessing or even helping preserve old software, what are the legitimate, safer ways to go about it?
Right. Is there a way to be a good digital archaeologist?
Yeah.
Well, there are things. Firstly, support the legitimate archives. The Internet Archive is doing amazing work trying to build legal frameworks for software preservation and access. They deserve support.
Okay, that makes sense. Donate or contribute.
Exactly. Another thing, contact the companies. If there's a classic game you love, tell the publisher. Go on their social media, send emails. If enough fans express interest, sometimes they listen. It can actually influence decisions about re-releases.
Huh. So people power can actually work sometimes.
It can. Don't underestimate it.
Yeah.
Then on a personal level, if you still have your original discs, cartridges, floppies,
Yeah, got a box of them somewhere.
consider making digital backups for your own use. It's often called dumping the ROM or the disk image. That's generally considered fair use for preservation or personal use.
Okay, just for myself.
Right. Sharing those widely gets back into the copyright gray area. If you do share, do it responsibly, maybe within small, trusted communities who understand the context. Think of yourself as less of a pirate, more of a careful librarian.
A librarian of ones and zeros.
Kind of, yeah. And honestly, the simplest thing, just keep your old physical media safe. Those floppy disks, those cartridges, they're historical artifacts now. Don't throw them out.
Good advice. So wrapping this up, it feels like abandonware is this messy, fascinating knot. You've got copyright law pulling one way,
Our desire to access and preserve our digital history pulling another.
ethical questions about who owns what, and the practical problems of just making old stuff work today.
It really forces a bigger question, doesn't it? We generally agree that old books, old films, old music should be preserved as cultural heritage.
Yeah, museums, libraries, archives.
So do video games and software deserve that same level of respect and effort, even when the legal system makes it really awkward?
That is the question, isn't it? Makes you think about all that software, all those games from your past. Are they just disposable entertainment? Or are they cultural artifacts worth saving, even fighting for, maybe?
And it's not just games. Old operating systems, early graphic design software, educational tools, It's all part of the story of how we got here, digitally speaking.
A really important point. How do we make sure our digital world doesn't just disappear? Lots to think about there.